How is it going?
Not bad. You?
All right.
All things considered.
Breaking news, I've just been accused of gaslighting by the Albion Roar, which is quite an interesting response to a Brighton game against Chelsea today.
What tweet prompted that?
I just said that dodgy refereeing decisions are going to keep happening week in and week out as long as De Zerbi keeps consistently speaking out against refs. And they've just said, you're actually blaming De Zerbi, awful gaslighting. I mean, if that's what they can take from that tweet, then they should probably join a VAR crew to join in on the festivities this Christmas season. Robin, Craig, Adam is not with us today. He's got parents, family in town. So I hope he has a lovely time. I feel like there's a lot of people doing some kind of mid Thanksgiving Christmas get together. I've got a couple of friends all doing that across the pond.
It's just cheaper, isn't it? Like, yeah. If you try and travel on Thanksgiving weekend, and you're paying double of what you probably should. So you delay it a week, do your little Christmas early, Thanksgiving late, and it seems to work. So yeah, but fun times.
Robin, how are we?
Yeah, well, good. Was in Lapland last week, so that was nice.
Oh yeah, how was that?
It was cold. It was cold. It was like minus 20 degrees. But like we went with like a tour operator, and they sent us all this stuff. They're like, right, wear a base layer, wear a mid layer, and then the hotel will give you like insulated suits, like snow suits basically. And whatever, I don't know what they make their snow suits of, but genuinely I didn't feel the cold at all. Like I could have been out there all day. Mad. But yeah, it was good. Did drove a husky sleigh. It was genuinely terrifying. Because you're like going down. It's just the dogs obviously know where they're going. It's obviously the same track every time. But yeah, you're on this sleigh and it's basically skis at the back, and then in the middle is just a foot brake. And the foot brake is basically just two spikes on it. So you put your weight down on it and it will just slow your speed down. But it doesn't do a huge amount when you need to like stop quite quickly. And yeah, snowmobile, which is good fun. It's kind of like if you've driven a quad bike, it's basically it's exactly the same as that. But yeah, it was good. It was good. I'd never been that far north before. And even aside from the kind of the kid stuff for Christmas, like just to go there as a place, like you feel like exactly where you are, like at the top of the world. There's like miles and miles of nothing but snow and trees. Like I don't know how you could live there in winter. It's like 3 hours of daylight a day. Like, and the rest of the time, even when it's like proper daylight, it's not like proper. There's still like it's almost like dusk. It's kind of the best you get. But an amazing place to go. Like you really feel like I guess it's like places like Alaska, are probably quite similar. But yeah, you really feel like exactly where you are, which is like kind of slightly helpless. Like I literally was driving around, like, obviously in a coach, and you feel like I was like, if I was on my own here, and if you're driving around here on your own and you break down, I was like, you are legitimately in big trouble. Like the nearest big city, like there was a village near where we were. The nearest big city is 250 kilometers, which is Rovaniemi. So you're 250 kilometers away from like proper civilization. But yeah, it was good. I'd recommend it as a place to go.
Nice.
Love that. Love it. I love all things Christmas, so I'm an absolute sucker for the idea of doing that. And I don't even have any kids, so I would be like a fish out of water, really. I wouldn't really belong.
It was really well done. Like, we got like a reindeer ride to go and see Santa, and like they sent out these like letter templates for the kids to write, and then Santa produces their letters, and they're like, it's really well done, like really, really well done. So it was good.
I love that. Craig, your keyboard is absolutely offensive.
Yeah, sorry. I'm like
so loud.
Absolutely.
I apologise for that.
No, you don't have to. And that was so funny. It was worth it. I'm glad you cracked on.
I was like, are you writing a really angry letter in the 1950s?
I'm still fuming from the result. I'm sending PGMOL an email as we speak.
Just like,
yeah.
Anyway.
Jesus. Sorry to everyone.
Goodness gracious. No, that was superb. Talking of superb, Let's start with Ike Athens away. None of us were able to go to this one, but we all watched it, I'm sure, at varying times of the day, with us all over the world. Robin, did you get to see any of it? Were you back?
Yeah, no, I did. Yeah, I watched it all. It was sort of the anti-Albion performance, wasn't it? It was basically what teams normally do to us.
I think that's the most. It's the most interesting thing about it for me.
Yeah, it really is. Like
showing such a different side.
Dominate, coming at a really fast start, dominating the early exchanges. Probably should have had one, possibly two goals. And then penalty, red card. It's the textbook Albion capitulation. And yeah, it's really nice to see it happening on the other side. In quite a big game, but I read something like they hadn't won at home in like 22 games in the Europa League or something like that. So it wasn't hugely surprising that they didn't win. But yeah, I did fear at the beginning. Obviously, Ferguson had a really good chance early on, didn't he? That could have made things a little bit easier. But no, good to get the result. And what is it? So that's 4 games unbeaten. 4 games in a row, isn't it? So 3 wins in a row, isn't it? 3 Europa League wins in a row. So I mean, I think when we were offered that, when we got that group, if you'd have been offered qualification with a game to go and a home win to secure a top spot, I mean, who's not taking that, right?
Absolutely.
That type of gritty performance, wasn't it? I think we can shy away from the fact that we definitely weren't at our best at all. But being able to win whilst being less than optimal is something that we haven't seen in a while. So yeah, it was a nice change.
That and Forest are the two. We've started to tweak the style in that we're now quite happy to get rid of the ball when we need to. Which we got caught out a couple of times, probably more than a couple of times early in the season, when we were trying to play out from the back absolutely every time, regardless of the match situation, regardless of the number of defenders or number of attackers closing you down. And it is it's quite it's sort of quite anti-De Zerbi to be sort of pleased that we've got that string to our bow, which is actually, there are moments where you can try and play as pretty football as you want, but occasionally you've got to put you've got to put your foot through the ball and just relieve pressure for a little bit. So that was nice to see that.
Indeed. I guess the general take on Twitter, as I'm being dogpiled on now, is that I am blaming De Zerbi, and we all hate De Zerbi on this podcast. So I guess that's our new stance, fellas. So we did pretty well. Veltman, Dunk, Igor, Hinshelwood again at left back. That's 3 games in a row now the poor boy has had to play left back, which is not his role. As far as I'm aware, it is supposed to be centre midfield that he plays naturally. But he's been playing left back for 3 games in a row now. Gilmore, Gross, Mitoma, Ferguson, Adingra, and Pedro. I mean, for a midweek game with a lot of games coming up, that's quite strong, isn't it, when you consider our injury list?
Yeah, that was as strong as we could have been, really.
This tends to be the par for the course at the moment, isn't it? Just like, what do you think of that team? Like, that's probably the best we could have fielded, like with what we have at our disposal. So, yeah, I mean, Pedro, we've spoken about João Pedro a lot. Like, one of the first names on the team sheet for all of us, I assume. So, yeah, it's as strong as you can. Yeah, poor Hinshelwood as well, like having to put in a shift there at left back. But yeah, it's the best you could possibly field, right? And we saw just the opening 20-25 minutes were a slog to watch, that's for sure.
Yeah. All right, we've got Bart in goal. Are we happy with this? Are we wanting to see this continue now? What is going on here? Because we've now seen Steele come back in today. Mikey in the chat just brings it up. Steele was in. Good decision. Yay or nay?
No. Just 100% no. I think if we went back to the beginning of the season, I'm not even on any sort of fence about this. If we went back to the beginning of the season, I think most of our predictions were basically that there would be some kind of rotation between the two, and that by the time we got to kind of January, I think we said that sort of time, we thought Bart would be the kind of the number one. And I think at this point, we need to hang our hat on him being number one. I mean, he's made a couple of saves. I mean, those 2 saves he made last week against Nottingham Forest, Steele's getting nowhere near that right at the end. That 100th minute save, Steele's getting nowhere near that. We should be hanging our hat on Bart being number one. Just that's what I think.
Craig, thoughts?
Yeah, I think so too. I don't want to discredit everything that Jason Steele has done in the last season a bit, though, right? So, like, he's a good established old head in that dressing room, or whatever you want to call it. I just think, yeah, we said at the start of the season that it was going to be sort of an in and out situation until one of them is just clearly becomes more favorable, and I feel like we've sort of hit that tipping point. And that's nothing against Steele. I just think it's just better for everyone involved if Bart is one and Steele is there as the backup. We'll come on to today. He didn't do too badly today for me, but it's just that Bart is better for me. And it just comes down to that.
Yeah, I mean, like cup goalkeeper and league goalkeeper has been a thing for a long time. It works. Like, there's no reason to get cute and just then like throw these things around. Like, there's just no reason. Like, it works. It works for everybody. Works for Manchester City, who are one of the best teams in the world, probably ever. It works for Burnley, like, who play a different goalkeeper in the cups. Like, it works for that's how it works. It's tried. It's proven.
Arteta,
it's effective.
right? Arteta's dumped it very quickly, like his rotation thing.
Big time, yeah. Poor Ramsdale.
Like, he did it for what, 2-3 weeks maybe, and has decided. Obviously, it was quite a big thing. He was, it was newsworthy when he was doing it and talking about it, and we were still, we'd been doing it before and have still carried on doing it. And it's not really been newsworthy, but he dropped it very quickly because, as you say, Josh, there's kind of a reason why basically everybody doesn't do it, which is that it causes unnecessary instability, I would imagine. And certainly if you look at the last 2 games, Bart has been brilliant in both of those, and defensively we've been excellent in both of those games, particularly the Forest game. So this is one of the kind of things we go, does A plus B lead to C? But actually, you look at today, we've then swapped out the goalkeeper. Obviously Dunk's not there, which is another factor, but we swapped out the goalkeeper and then conceded 2 identical set pieces. So, how much of the fact that we're chopping and changing with the goalkeeper again has led to that?
Yeah,
I need someone to carry this podcast. I've literally got effing Santa Claus outside with sleigh bells on down our street, and the dogs are losing their shit. So if someone can continue this conversation, I would appreciate it.
No worries.
God, it is the season. Yeah, I think the only possible argument I could think of is that you need leaders on the team if Dunk is not going to be there. So that's the only thing that I could possibly think of.
Yeah, you're right. Obviously, with Gross also on the bench.
Yeah,
Milne's on the bench. It's a very young team, isn't it? Well, it's a very experienced team.
You've still got teenagers out there. You have to remember, right?
Mostly teenagers, to be honest.
Yeah, so you've got an 18-year-old at left back. You've got another 19-year-old at right wing. You've got obviously Lallana in the middle as the captain is fantastic, but he's playing in that advanced cam role anyway. So just having someone there, and I think still, I don't say it was the right choice, but I can understand the choice. And in that respect, right, you can talk about the corners whatever you like, but we've been awful at corners regardless of who's in goal, right? So that's by the by, and if Lewis Dunk is there, then it's a different story, I'm sure. So whilst I can sit here, and say, right, yeah, Bart in hindsight could have been a better choice. Because we saw the set pieces and the penalty. I can still understand why Steele was in there, and I think it could be partially justified. But I think we're just talking in the medium to long term, like, let's stick with who is going to be number one, right? Let's not keep flapping about with this. We have enough rotation in the outfield 10 as it is. Yeah, regardless of whether also changing the one consistent factor that is normally in your team.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say as well. I think when you're having to make so many changes anyway. Changing your goalkeeper seems like a luxury one that you don't need to be doing on top of everything else.
Yeah, I agree. And you know, for us, that's Bart, obviously. You know, and just with that, and still, I would love for Still to play in the Europa League and play in the FA Cup and all of that sort of stuff. Like that's absolutely fine. I think he's a more than capable goalkeeper. I just think you're right that the amount of rotation there it doesn't lend itself too well. But there you go. Should we talk about the set pieces? Because obviously the first goal, like 15, 20 minutes in, is just bad set piece defending. And just I think comes over, just they clearly had a game plan from set pieces, and we can talk about that too, but punt it to the far post, bring it back into the middle, and someone will be there waiting for him because Jack Hinshelwood is 5'6", right? And that tend to be the theme for the first couple. I just, we can talk about a set piece coach and Nick Stanley and everything like that, but it's just par like for the course, isn't it? Really?
Yeah, I find it baffling. Like I said in our chat, like, and this is not supposed to be overly critical, but it's more just I find it amazing that these guys train like full time, right? Like the amount of training that they do, and this is clearly our Achilles heel, right? Like undeniably, if you look across every aspect of the game, most other aspects are going fine.
Well, and counterattacks, right? Like,
but like
we collapse on the counter.
If you sat everybody down and you're like, right, if there's one aspect of the game that we need to work on, what is it? Like, if you ask most people, I would imagine set piece defending
and attacking.
Set piece.
I think that's the first goal from a set piece that we've scored outside of penalties. Obviously, yeah, I think someone in like the stateside chat has been keeping count. I think we're like literally at like 165 plus corners at this point without a goal before today. So yeah, it's quite significant in needing of work.
But we've seemingly got, considering that, like we are 5 months into the season, near enough. We have not got any better at defending corners. Like, we just haven't. And I find that wild, given the amount of hours available on the training pitch.
Can I counter that? Just one, well, not counter it, but at least bring attention to one thing as well. We gave away quite a few fouls to Athens in the middle of the week, and they were very, very good against us when it came to set pieces at the Amex. We all watched that shit show unfold, and we defended them very, very well this time. I will just point out that the difference was Bart Verbruggen again. And
Lewis Dunk.
Yeah, I think that Bart claims at least one of those today that Chelsea scored. Literally the identical goals back to back.
What would be interesting is to get the view of people that have been to very recent games like that, where the away fans are kind of right up on the pitch. Because what I want a view on, which is very difficult to get, is which keeper's got better communication. Like, who is really organising the defence, and who is coming, as you say, Josh, who is being very authoritative to say, I'm claiming this is mine, get out of the way. Like, that's the kind of the factor that is probably really important, but we're just not we don't really get a view of it necessarily unless you're in the ground close enough to kind of observe it. But you'd have thought that the role of the goalkeeper in, positioning everybody, making sure everyone's where they should be, is quite important.
Well, I'm at Burnley next weekend, and my seat is really close to that goal. So I'll now
homework for next week.
Yeah, I'll not even bother actually watching the game. I'll just stare down the keeper, whoever it is.
Make notes.
You need
to know as to whether it might be something that's making no difference, but you'd see maybe there's a difference in how their positioning is, or whatever it might be. But it is certainly interesting that as I say, like the Forest game, that again we defended really well, especially with 10 men towards the end, where it was 15 or 20 minutes of pretty consistent crosses and set pieces. Without Dunk, we defended that really well. And again, Verbruggen's the keeper then, isn't he? So
yep,
it's one of those things. Say it may be us drawing the wrong conclusion from circumstantial evidence, but
I mean, he was marked as player of the match on WhoScored.com for the Athens game. It's hard to get player of the match in a Who Scored rating as a goalkeeper, because goals and assists weight that, like, it's an insane weight generally that goals and assists get on that website. So for him to be top, and it didn't even, I mean, he made a couple of good saves, but like it wasn't like a masterclass, right? Like it wasn't one of those ones where you think, Jesus, he kept us totally in it here. He was just very good. Dunkey as well, obviously. Let's talk a little bit about one of my favorites, who is continuing to be just absolutely superb, Mr. João Pedro, the guy that you want behind a penalty these days, right? Like we thought we'd found the penalty kick taker since Tomer Hemed left, who is the best one I've ever watched at the Albion, in Alexis McAllister. And João Pedro has came in with just so much pressure on every single one. He doesn't ever win penalties in situations where it's chill. It's always like insane cauldrons. Marseille, Athens, at home to Athens, at the Athens end. Like he just looked like he only seems to get penalties against like just unbelievable pressure moments. And he is still with 100% record. And he's not a small lad. And he's just came in and converted the first goal from a corner in 84 years of Albion corners. How important is he going to be in the next couple of months, especially as we're kind of trying to get people back from injury? Like he's just unbelievable, isn't he?
I mean, if you look at his hold up play is phenomenal as well. The only thing is that we've said his finishing from inside the box leaves a little bit to be desired, and he's had a few first touches that make Craig McHale-Smith look like Messi. But other than that, I mean, it's this classic one where you go, if he had those parts of his game nailed down, then he wouldn't be with us, would he? It's the same, it's basically, Pascal Gross with pace, isn't with us either, is it? So it's the kind of, we're not going to find the perfect player sitting with us. But, we called it so early on, like that ice cold penalty taker. I know it's taken us collectively different stages to reach the point where you go, right, this guy is like, he is it. But I say it is, every time he steps up to take a penalty, I'm 100% convinced he's going to score. Like De Zerbi's obviously not. You see De Zerbi watching doesn't watch them, but I don't know whether it's becoming just like sort of the weight of it. He's done so many that as the better he gets, even more confidence he gets. But like you say, all in those kind of cold. I don't think he relishes the fact that he's in a cold whatever it might be, Athens, Marseille, and on top of that, he has the gall just to roll them in as well. Like the ones that look even worse. Like if you miss those, like, you try and roll it in and you just basically pass it to the goalkeeper. You just look like a dickhead, don't you?
I think that's the thing I like about Harry Kane's penalties, however much of a prick he is when he was at Spurs. Like, I love the fact that for England, at least, like even when he missed against France, like he blasts every single pen, like the school of Shearer. Like he just fucking hammers each one. And I'm like, I don't care. As long as one, it's on target, and two, you hit it hard. Like I can forgive you not scoring it, because then after that, it's just luck, isn't it? Right?
It's not through the lack of trying. Yeah. I was probably the last convert, but I can say that I'm now dead set on João Pedro just scoring every single one. Yeah. So like, but I'm of the De Zerbi ilk, because I hate penalties. That's just one of my things. I just, especially if it involves Brighton or England to that respect, it's just painful for me to watch.
It is. I have to say, the one I didn't watch his one at Marseille in the ground. I couldn't watch that because it's one of those games where it had been such like basically the whole balance of that day rested on whether he put that ball in the back of it or not. It wasn't just the game; it was like the entire trip, everything. But that's the only one I've never watched. But
so I have a ritual, right? Because Josh will be aware of this. I'm always like 60 seconds behind when I watch the games, even if they're live. Like just the relay is just slower, right? So as soon as I see a penalty or anything like that, the phone turns over. I take the watch off and I just slam the laptop shut because as soon as it's a penalty, I don't want to see, like, I can't even fathom like knowing anything about it. So like even if again, Athens was at 11:45 in the morning for Central American time, so I'm halfway through doing some work, I've got it on the side, and then bang, slam. Just I don't want to know anything about it. I don't know what's wrong with me, but I shouldn't have to worry because João Pedro scores every single one of them. So we're fine.
You know what's mad as well, Josh? You'll appreciate this as well. For me, it's exactly the same on my latest Football Manager save. Genuinely, it's like it is every like the season. Like at the moment, he has scored every single one. If he's not on the pitch or if he's not in the squad, Gross has tried to take one, Gilmore's tried to take one, Ferguson's tried to take one. They've all missed. But João Pedro scored every one. So hats off to the Football Manager guys for building that in as well.
SI Games on it, on top of it. There's a reason why they're used by actual football clubs, I guess.
It's just absurd. But it is, and the fact he's so young as well, we forget. He's 22, 20, I think he's just 23, isn't he? 22, 23, something like that. You forget that despite being that young, he's really experienced. We said before, he's really experienced in English football as well. Played a lot of big games. Probably I don't know what he was like for Watford taking penalties. I presume the same.
He was their captain.
Last year, wasn't it?
From every Watford fan I've heard of, it's like he was the sole reason that they weren't relegated like that last year with how poor they were. Like he dragged them to mid-table. I have to assume that he was pretty good at
the same thing.
Yeah. His penalty conversion rate. I'm sure there's a stat somewhere. Championship will have like lots of stats available. I'll have a look for it while I'm doing this, having this conversation. We'll see if we can find it. Couple of others to talk about that I'd love to touch on. This is a player that everybody was a little bit up in the air about when we signed him, and I've also been like unashamedly a fan pretty early on. But we all were a little bit reserved with signing him because the last time and only time most Brighton fans will have seen him was coming on as a substitute in the dying moments of Fiorentina and making an absolute mess of a break, allowing West Ham to win the Conference League. That is not the Igor that Brighton and Hove Albion have, is it? I thought he was very good today. I thought he was very good against Athens. And at this point, like, it's getting really tough because we just talked last week about the absolute heroics of Van Hecke. And now we've got Igor, who has been unbelievably consistent, naturally left-footed, very good at progressing the ball. And we've obviously got club captain Lewis Dunk, who's always going to start. It's a good problem for De Zerbi to have, I think. But I think that, Igor has played himself into a position now where he should be considered for that constant rotation, if anything else, which brings in another problem of rotating centre halves, which you don't want to have. So it's a tough one. I'm glad I'm not paid to make these decisions.
Yeah, it is really tough, isn't it? It's very, very tough because actually Dunk was brilliant in that Athens game. But as we've talked about, he's not generally been up to his stellar best across the season as a whole. So you could, it's really difficult. You go generally on form. Probably Van Hecke's out in front, isn't he? As in terms of consistency this season. And actually, there's not a huge toss-up between Dunk and Igor currently on form. But see, Dunk has, club captain has all of that kind of history behind him. Be really interesting if Dunk, if Dunk was also a relatively new signing and didn't have all of that club captain, etc., who you'd be picking out of Igor and Dunk. Because I think it would be pretty close at the moment.
He is good, isn't he? And he's silky. And I feel for Webster, who's now completely out in the abyss, because I think but just with what Igor has some very Webster-esque type runs in him that we saw in Athens as well, where he just bombs forward and gets into that middle space if you really divert wide. Something that we've seen Webster do and do very well, but is kind of not doing it as often for whatever reason. So Igor being able to press into that space in the middle, just giving that extra person there, is very good, and he's very solid defensively. So it's, for me, you're going Duncan Van Hecker at the moment. Van Hecker's been insane the last couple of games, I think, just with what he's been doing and how far he's come. So Duncan Van Hecker are the two for me, but Igor does have a bone to pick if he's not being rotated into that, or he needs to give some outstanding performances so that's his, and he's the one that needs to be dropped as opposed to Van Hecker. He's slightly unfortunate at the moment that Van Hecker's playing out of his skin, and Dunk is just number one on the team sheet.
Yeah, it's brutal, isn't it? And obviously we're not a team that traditionally plays three at the back at this point, so it's not even like you can do that, because if anything, Veltman certainly hasn't played himself out of a role, has he? Like, Veltman is also superb. It's a shame none of them can learn to play like natural left back. But it seems clear to me at this point that with Hinshelwood being drafted in there, De Zerbi definitely isn't comfortable enough to be putting Igor at left back naturally. I know he's filled in a couple of times as an emergency, but it certainly isn't something that they want to be doing full time. So I think that's going to be one of those things that we're just going to have to see how De Zerbi rotates them, because he's suffering from success a little bit here. That we've had so many injuries, and we're operating very much on a next man up process, and so many of those men are putting in superb performances. So, I mean, look at Adingra, right? Like when Martin and Ciso come back. Obviously with March, it's a year away problem, right? And we never know what sort of Solly March ever comes back, right? Let's not like cook him too much, but like it's very reasonable and possible to assume that a 30-year-old Solly March is not half the player he ever was, and we don't get that back. But when you look at Mitoma, Adingra, and Ciso, Fati, like again, like we're running into a situation where Adingra has done nothing to lose that place, but there's a pretty solid chance he will, isn't it?
I think it entirely depends how quickly Ciso comes out of the blocks. Because we've seen, like I said, De Zerbi's pretty happy to make what on the surface are pretty brutal decisions in terms of you think someone's done nothing wrong, but they're out because of whatever reason. It depends wholly how quickly Ciso gets up to speed. If he picks up pretty much where he left off, then it's an interesting problem to have, isn't it?
Poor Adingra is being run into the ground at the moment, by the way. Like,
I guess he's going to go. I mean, he's going to be gone in January, isn't he, for the AFCON anyway?
Yeah,
It depends whether Ciso is back.
And he's getting picked, isn't he? Like, there's no doubt about that. So I think I think Fati comes back by that time as well, and you've got Ciso back. A little bit of rustiness there, but whatever. Like, you saw Becca Berti come on today at the end of today's game, right? I don't want to jump forwards, but this is the extent of the injuries that we've got.
And we saw Duffus come on in Athens and nearly score a blind.
Should have sealed it. And actually, don't worry about
it. It was given offside, but he wasn't.
He was.
Like, it would have counted, and it was such a glorious move as well. And I was like, it was so close to just bending it in.
You think of a more perfect debut for a club? Are you joking? Like, even having your debut away to Athens in the Europa League at 18 years old,
just coming on and just curling it inside into the top corner. So
he came back and played the under-23s the next day as well, by the way.
It's mad.
Hey, jump straight on the plane.
But actually, the benefit of this is that we are blooding these youngsters who ordinarily would be nowhere near, which is great. Like I think they said, I think the under-23s played at the Amex the other day, didn't they, in their European equivalent, and the coach was making the point, say actually they don't want to get to the stage where someone's coming on, someone has to play, and they basically they're just cold. They've not played at the Amex before, they've not played for the first team, and suddenly they're thrust in. So now you've got the extent where all of these young kids have been traveling in the match day squad, coming on here and there. Even if they're not coming on, they're still getting the the vibe of sitting on the bench, in a full
match day treatment,
in a big stadium with the atmosphere, etc. So that is, to take any positives from the injury situation, it's going to be that.
Yeah, it really is, and I don't think you can understate like how important that's going to be for these players as they grow. And for us, I mean, that marked one of the most momentous occasions in our entire club history too. We're now sat second in Group B on 10 points. Marseille 1 point ahead of us on 11 because, of course, they got that draw against Ajax, against us, and then they've won their last 3. And obviously, we ballsed it up against Athens at home. But we're now absolutely qualified for the next round of the Europa League. And we now have it all to play for to seal that top spot and avoid a Champions League dropout situation at home to Marseille in 11 days, because it just doesn't stop at this time of the year. We're in a seriously strong position though, aren't we? Like, I understand Marseille have improved under Gattuso, but at home, under the lights, all the pressure, João Pedro has to start. If he doesn't, I'm going to cry. But this is, I mean, an unbelievable time to be a Brighton fan. We've just watched us probably get a best result in Albion history.
Yeah, it's huge, isn't it? I think you don't want to understate just the achievement there, just because it was a very much a smash and grab type deal. But you're playing knockout European football now, right? And you go to the draw of the group, and everyone's saying, "Oh, Marseille, Ajax, like Athens, that's a tough group. Like, how are they going to do?" 10 points from 5 games is how we're going to do, and we're sort of a home win away from even skipping the round of 32. So, that's I wouldn't say. Well, for me, we've definitely overachieved in that respect. I didn't expect us to be in this position with a game spare, automatically qualified, and now going to go and win the group. Right, those are big teams, so it's huge. And being able to go away to Athens, squad half full of teenagers, smash and grab the win, come back, and it's massive, and they deserve every single bit of it.
And like I said, I love how much Palace must hate everything about this as well. Like, it's just like, I would be like, let's be honest, if the boot's on the other foot, how much are we hating that? If Palace do what we've done.
Yeah, it's horrible.
Like, it's legitimately horrible. But the fact that we qualified in the first place would have been irritating for them, obviously. And then we get a really good group in terms of, like, nice cities to go to. And then we do quite well. We've qualified. It's just like, it must be really irritating for them.
Yeah, I can imagine. It's not their favourite time of the year. I don't know how they did today. Did they draw or did they win?
Yeah, they drew. Yeah,
drew against a
West
very
Ham.
poor West Ham side as well. Yeah. All right. Well, move on to this shit show that we watched today. And we've already talked a little bit about the set piece issues that we've got and what's going on. But I mean, this starting 11 for starters, the fact that we are feeling pretty aggrieved by the result today. And De Zerbi has now came out and he's said he doesn't want to speak about referees. We have to accept the referee's decision. I don't know if it was a mistake or not. This is some quality restraint from Roberto. I suspect someone has spoken to him beforehand and has said, please, like, we need you on the sideline.
He's read your tweet, hasn't he? Clearly.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
I'm not being gaslighted by them.
Yeah, I mean, like, he's came out, he's just refused to talk about it altogether. And sadly, that's exactly what PGMOL want, right? Like, that's what they want. They want total submission and compliance to whatever they're doing, regardless of how unbelievably wrong it is. But how is Caicedo on that pitch today? How is he there? It's baffling to me. How are we having the game stopped for such a clear ball to the face in order for a VAR check? How are we having a situation where Pochettino genuinely believes that Gallagher's second attack foul was not a yellow card? How are we getting to a point where Milner's was a clear and obvious error, which is a tackle we see every week in the Premier League? It's just a shoulder, like a chest to chest, shoulder to shoulder, body to body collision. That's just not anything in it. Neither of them were even near the ball, frankly. Mudryk was never going to get there, and neither was Milner.
Do you know what the wildest thing is about the? You were right, Craig, in the chat. Craig Pawson gives a penalty for that one that's hit Cole in the face.
Mental.
So he's given that as a penalty, and then had to go over and review it, and then overturn the decision. And apparently, I'm just reading a tweet now. They said because the call was reversed, it is then a drop ball. So that is the correct decision in terms of being a drop ball. But he's genuinely given a penalty for that. When it's like it's clattered him in the face. So how is he so certain that that one's a penalty? It's mad.
I don't get it. And so back to the Milner penalty, quote unquote, right? Like that type of shepherding, you will see 6 or 7 times a game when you try and see a ball out for a corner or a goal kick or whatever you want to talk about it, right? So I don't get it. And if I'm just saying, in my own opinion, if that happened to us, we don't get that. They whistle on and they go play on. They don't even check it. So, I can put my tinfoil hat on. I could be here all day, but nobody wants to listen to that. It's just more around, okay, the inconsistency of these damn things. I'm so tired about talking about it, but just the sheer inconsistency and the sheer re-refereeing of the game from someone that is not at the ground in a clear and obvious error when clearly they just wanted to change the actual result of the foul. It's just shocking. And I don't get it. And as going back to the whole Caicedo thing, God knows there's 3 or 4 yellow cards that you probably could have had today. And you get one of them, and that was well overdue in the first place, but it doesn't make sense to me.
I think you're right, though, that I don't want to dwell too long on this. So Robin, what have you got for us?
I mean, I'm with Craig.
And then we can move on.
I'm just bored of talking about it. And it's just really sad that after every game, not even just our games, every game, seemingly, the headline is about a refereeing decision, which is sad, right? Because, like, you always say it's the classic, if you haven't noticed the referee, then he's had a really good game. But, like whether it's, like Wolves before yesterday, like Wolves have been done twice in 2 weeks by awful penalties right at the end. And then you obviously had the Newcastle Arsenal one that dominate, a red card and a goal that dominated that game. It just seems like it's all that's ever talked about. And it's not even just us being biased about Brighton games. It's every game, it seems that's the takeaway is that someone has made an error which has changed the course of the game. And it's getting to the point where it's ridiculous.
And and I agree with you. I would rather sit here and talk about how crap we were.
Yeah.
and just say how much we deserve the thing. And you can go back and even listen to the Villa podcast if you really want to, right? But like it, we'll talk about it if we're shit. But
it's not sugarcoating it. It's just, it's the big talking point of the game. And it's boring. It's boring having to talk about it.
And to me, like I said in the chat earlier, like it's getting borderline like reckless too, right? Like the amount, and this is a Brighton thing. We've only had the one incident, right, with Paulinho and Gross, but we're starting to see it every week now, where there are some really quite dangerous and reckless elbows going into players' faces, back of their head, which is particularly scary. And they're not even blowing up for it. Like they're not even blowing up for a foul.
I've developed the theory, which is like, I know we've talked about the whole kind of tinfoil hat corruption thing to death, right? If we park that and you go, well, what is the explanation? Because you go and this isn't an anti-VAR thing. You just go pre-VAR, there weren't as many discussions post-game about referees as we have now, right? Like, I don't think I'm misremembering that. I think it just wasn't so front and center that there would be so many dominating, conversations about referees. My honest theory is that it's got to the point where I think referees have taken their eye literally off the ball because they know that they've got VAR in theory to back them up. But the problem is that, as we've seen, VARs don't want to throw their mates under the bus. So what you get from that is you get a whole bunch of poor decisions because the guys on the pitch are like, well, yeah, doesn't matter if I get it right first time or not because there's lots of other people looking at it. But those other people looking at it are reticent to throw their mates under the bus. That's my current working theory anyway.
I mean, it's absolutely true though, right? Like, we're literally watching it and we've had Mike Dean come out in writing and say that is exactly the case. I mean, like, I talked about it before that, like, linesmen are essentially a waste of money now. They don't do anything. Linos don't do anything anymore.
Told not to put their flags up.
Yep. They literally offer nothing to the game anymore.
And they don't even their decision on whether something's offside or not is pointless because it will be looked at in minute detail by VAR anyway. Like the number of times that they give a throw in and the referee gives it the other way. It's like, oh, I didn't realize you were much closer to it than the guy who's 2 meters away from what's just happened. Pointless, completely pointless.
I tell you what it feels like, honestly, at this point, and Craig will know how I feel. And James in the chat has just posted, the whole VAR experience is very much as if the reviewing of referee decisions has been outsourced to two morons on Twitter who don't watch football, don't really like football, and don't know the rules. Dunk sending off was surely due to accumulated frustration at refereeing incompetence. I mean, yeah, probably. The ref must control the game firmly and consistently, right? Like, we've seen that absolutely isn't the case. What I feel has happened to the game since VAR has came in, and I feel like let's say that it's definitely not corrupt and it's just idiocy. Let's say there's no dodginess going on whatsoever, even though I would argue that when you look at the decisions City and Newcastle get while they pay referees to referee in their leagues, really owes some very serious hawkeye on it. If we just attribute to stupidity and shitness, right, instead of dodginess, it feels like it's become a sports entertainment situation, not a sport. It feels like we're going slowly but surely into WWE situations. We're getting to a point where we know that if that referee is sent to the monitor, he's going to give whatever decision he's told. There is no due process there. That is the way it works 100% of the time, right? In Europe, it's different, but in the Premier League currently, if a referee is called to the monitor, I think I saw twice in all monitor call-ups, and that was both early on in the first season of VAR. Both times. And they're the only 2 times you've ever seen it turned over. It's now because it's theatre, right? It's theatre to get the crowd worked up, and like, that's not sport. That's sports entertainment. That's literally like the mystery general manager of Raw for the 10 years ago, right? Like,
we're getting into that point.
It's just theatre. There's no.
But you know what it is? It's like, you go with like what we've seen the Forest game last week, today as well. The referee in both of those games has not been in control, right? The Forest game particularly just seemed to just lose the plot of what was going on. Is it because now effectively the referee isn't the most important element in this?
Absolutely.
So if you're a player, right, pre-VAR, the referee is paramount because whatever the referee decides is what's going to happen. Now, if you're on the pitch and the referee gives a decision, be it a penalty or, a sending off, whatever it might be, as a player, you know that the referee isn't the most paramount person here because someone else is going to make the decision ultimately. So do you not lose a little bit of respect for the referee?
You do, and
they're not the guy in charge.
They are the scapegoat for the real decision, right? Yeah. So, and I think you're spot on, right? I think the VAR officials can hide in a static caravan somewhere
150 miles.
and go and just say, right, actually we want to change this. And to Josh's point, right, you send the referee over to the monitor, you are telling the referee to change their mind. You're not saying we need to advise here and you need to take a quick look at this and see if you agree with us. It's now become, you got this wrong, you need to change your mind, in which case the power and the element of control is completely switched. So that's where the work is needed. And I think a knock-on impact and almost like a double impact there is no one gives a crap about what the ref says on the pitch now, because he doesn't need to get it right anymore. There's no due diligence there. There's no actual skill involved there. He can just blow for a penalty for something that's clearly hit someone in the head and go, don't worry about it, because they'll just go and check it anyway. In which case it completely devoids any necessity to be good at your job, really. And also that's the issue.
Back to that. We keep coming back to the point of VAR was supposed to be to intervene and overturn absolute clangers, not to re-referee.
Yeah. And if there's no VAR, I would like to think, this is a very, very contentious point, I'd like to think he doesn't blow for that because it's not very clearly a penalty, right?
Correct.
He's gone and blown for that and gone, if I've got that wrong, whatever, it'll be overturned anyway. There's no repercussion for getting it wrong there. But what you are doing is diminishing your respect on the pitch by just simply blowing for everything and getting it re-refereed for you. It's useless.
But you know what it is to say?
You would like to think there's a linesman who checks that at the same time, right? And they hold that discussion without VAR.
If only there was someone else, like 3 others that are with him, like in the ground, that could also experience it. Jesus, what?
And I think the issue is as well. Sorry, I think the issue is that those people who are in VAR 150 miles away will next week be on the pitch, and the ones who are on the pitch will be in the VAR caravan. So that's the issue too, I think, is just it's just this.
The whole thing's just messed, isn't it?
Yeah.
But if you look at take the Championship, right? So that's a league which gets a lot of coverage in general. Yeah. Right? Obviously not as much as the Premier League, but you get a lot of coverage of the Championship, be it in written journalism or Sky Sports News or whatever it might be, right? Covered pretty well. How many instances this season has there been where the dominating talking point has been a refereeing decision? I don't think there's been many.
I'll tell you one. When old dickhead Taylor got demoted and ruined and railroaded that Coventry game.
Oh yeah, that is interesting, isn't it?
So ironically, the Premier League referee that messed up the VAR call, who then got demoted for being shit, then was so shit in the Championship that he was the talking point that week. So that's where we're at with that. That's the only one I can remember.
But it's just, I know we said we were bored of it and didn't want to talk about it, and have now talked about it for a long time. But it's genuinely one of the things we go, I don't even know how they would start fixing it. Because there's too many aspects.
Semi-automated offsides for a start.
There's too many aspects of it that are just you have to separate out the refereeing pool from the VAR pool. You can't have, as to Josh's point, you cannot have the situation where someone is going to be a referee one week and there's going to be a VAR the week after that, because naturally they're not going to want to be on the end of what they're going to give their mates. So,
all right. Let's actually move on because we have obviously got a lot of games left to play for the rest of this year. It is crazy season for football, and the best way to watch it, you guessed it, down at your local Green King Sports pub, of course. Where else? After all, Christmas is a time to catch up with friends, old and new, like Adam is right now with his mum. So get the team to your local for pints, food, and live action of every Christmas cracker. Love the puns that I've been given to whip out here. This is definitely my kind of messaging. Every fixture from TNT, Sky, and Amazon who are rearing their ugly head as usual around the Christmas period, is live at Green King Sport Pubs. That means wall-to-wall action on huge HD screens. So head down to your local Green King, watch every winning goal, any volley, any dodgy VAR decision that we'll talk about at horrible, odious length in an atmosphere worth sharing. Download the Green King Sport app and you will receive 10% off drinks every single time there's a game on the TV. So if you fancy a cheaper pint than usual, get it downloaded, crack on with it. Let's end this podcast on a good note, though, because I think that actually, even though this officiating situation was a shit show, there's a lot of credit to be had here today, and I'll tell you why. Steele, Hinshelwood, Igor, Van Heck, Veltman, Baleba, Gilmore, Adingra, Lallana, Bonanotte, and Ferguson. So we've got Hinshelwood playing at left back. We've got no Lewis Dunk. We've got Baleba coming into the middle of the park. We've got Gilmore playing on a 48-hour turnaround. We've got Lallana back in. We've got Adingra again, who's been run into the ground. We've got someone who we considered was a rather lightweight, Bonanotte. Veltman, again, playing right back on the turnaround of what was just an insane couple of days in Athens. And Ferguson, who has not looked at his fittest this season after he got ill at the Athens home game. We've speculated a little bit on that, but I don't think there's any much more need to go into that. He starts again. This team, along with the bench as well, is one of the probably the weakest on paper teams I have seen since the Houghton era, frankly. And that's not an indictment of that team. It's more the fact that we have got such a serious situation with the amount of injuries, the couple of suspensions, of course, that have been a little bit self-inflicted, and general need for rest with Pedro, Mitoma, and Gross on the bench, right? This team today, who were kept late in Athens, by the way, due to drug testing, from what I can understand, on the commentary today. Apparently, we actually left significantly later than usual. I think the following day we ended up leaving due to some of the drug tests that come in. They needed them to go, and I guess they couldn't, so they had to wait. And the commentary was basically like that. I know how it was from my day, like the adrenaline, the stuff, like you literally can't, like sometimes for a little while. So they took a lot longer to get back. Some of these boys went and played for under 23s, so did 12 hours of getting back when they were watching Fat Boy Slim 4 hours earlier. They came to Chelsea and they played well enough for us to feel aggrieved. If that doesn't tell us all of the positivity you need to hear that De Zerbi has instilled into this team, the winning mentality, the never say die mentality, like this team has it. Like they know what they can do. They have the confidence to do it. You have like Baker Boati come on and look like he's eager to contribute in the dying seconds. He's not hiding away, right? And he could have, because we had about 10 people in the box all the time. He had every reason he could have just backed off a little bit and shook his head. He was desperate for the ball. Like there's a lot of positives to take out from the team spirit and the togetherness, and you know, the over-exuberant celebrations last week at Forest probably showed it well as well. This team are so together, aren't they?
And I think at the end of the game, I don't know if it showed on your coverage, but Lewis Dunk came charging onto the pitch to basically have a fight with Robert Sanchez, who was being a bit of a dickhead. That shows you, like, the captain is not even playing, spots something, and is coming straight on the pitch.
Yeah, you can't question the mentality of these guys. And I think you do that first half, right? You can talk about I already talked about the 2 set pieces when we haven't even finished talking about Athens, by the way. That was my bad. But just with those, like they're just isolated cases, and we know that we're bad at those, and it's just 2 identical ones you learn from those. But on the whole, that first half isn't that bad, right? They're not creating endless amounts of opportunities. They've had 2 corners and scored from 2 of them. Is that annoying? Yeah. Should they be going in? No. But you know, on the whole, with the passage of play and what they were doing, with 12 injuries and fielding that team away to Chelsea and playing like you did in that first half, it's not like we were getting trounced in any way. It was quite even. which is what you can ask for 3 days removed from a trip to Athens.
Yeah, I thought it was excellent, all things considered.
And Chelsea are still woeful after spending £1 billion as well.
Well, I mean, that's the thing, right? They've had a week's rest and they had their full squad out, and they went life and death with us, and required a little bit of favourable officiating to take a result at home from a team that just played on Thursday night with half of their squad in A&E. There's a lot to be proud of from the Albion at the minute. We knew this season was nowhere near going to be as easy as the last one, right? We've got such a different outlook. It's not going to be made any easier than going to bloody Stoke in the FA Cup either, by the way. Yeah, big physical team that still are. They're not like Burnley that have undergone like a transformation. They still know how to make the Britannia. I don't know if it still is a Britannia anymore, a fortress. They know what they're doing. And that's going to be a very tough afternoon for whoever that 11 is against Stoke in early January of all times. This is tough, and we've got Brentford next on Wednesday. We've got Burnley at the weekend, which is probably a bit of a reprieve for the Albion, because if there's ever a team that you want to come up against, weirdly enough, now this season it is Burnley at home, isn't it? Because those two teams, the physicality without Ivan Toney is not there with Brentford. And Burnley are a very pretty team that want to play pretty football with non-Premier League players. So there's a little bit of a chance to get our groove back this week, I think.
Yeah. And shall we finish with the good news that De Zerbi's apparently going to sign a new contract?
Yeah, I saw that. There's been a couple of rumors and tweets going around, hasn't there, that De Zerbi is in the mood for a new deal. The sooner the better, frankly. I know there's been rumors here, there, and everywhere of Barca, of Real Madrid, of Juve, of Man City. But do you know what? I know some people are not a fan of his at this point, which is really weird. You see it on the socials every now and again, that they're just sick of him in the rotations. I know we criticize the keeper rotation plenty, but if there's ever a man, we love him. I just can't understand how you can't love him. He absolutely embodies everything that you want 2023 Brighton and Hove Albion Football Club manager to be. He carries everything that is the passionate side of Tony Bloom, frankly. He is that moment of Tony swinging his scarf at the promotion stuff, but just embodied into one Italian, bottled up, passionate man. That's what you want. And you can see the players love him. They'll die for him. They fight for him. They love him. For me, it's a blank check, but whatever you want, do it. Get 5-year deal on the board, whatever it costs.
Yeah, I don't think he's ready to move yet either. I think just what we're doing here and what he's instilled. Obviously, we're giving him a blank check and saying, please stay. But I think it's also probably better for him and his team as well, right? You keep going here. That big job will eventually come. I don't think we're under any illusions. But I think right now you're in the middle of a Europa League season. I'm under no illusions that we're not going to be in the top 6 this year, because just with the amount of injuries that we have and just what we have going on. So a nice little mid-table finish with some knockout European football is a very successful season. So if he wants to build on that, bring in more players, we do need to back him, right? And I think that'll be part of that whole contract negotiation is, are we going to bring more people in so that this injury thing doesn't become a consistent factor? As long as we can promise him that, then, the sky's the limit, right? Superb manager, deserves it.
How long, this final question, how long do you think he stays?
I think this is how I can see the season going. I think, obviously, we don't qualify for top 6. With this team and this ethos that he has drilled into them and players coming back in the second half of the season, I'm not going to rule out winning a trophy, because why should I at this point? It's we should stay excited, right? Round of 16. That we're still in a situation where I don't think we finished top 6, but we could still be playing Champions League football next year. Let's not forget that. Like we're what 1, 2, 3, 4. Like if we finish top, we're like 7 games away from playing Champions League football. Like that is a real thing. I think we don't finish top 6 this year. Whatever happens in the tournaments. I think 12th, 13th, 11th, somewhere like that. I think we come back stronger next year. And I think if we qualify for Europe next year, I think he probably stays. I think if he doesn't, but does really well and keeps making a name for himself, then I can see someone wanting him enough to the point of like, we think he's being held back by the resources that you're giving him. We're going to offer him whatever he wants and bring him to the next level. So I think it all depends on next season and where Brighton finish, in my opinion. What about you?
I have said pretty consistently that I think we'll get this season and next season. That's it.
I think so. Yeah, I reckon glass half empty. I don't think we get European football next season. But you get a full season to have a really good go at the domestics and the league. And that's where he's probably going to make his mark. So as long as, I think, Josh, you're right, like anywhere from 10th to 12th this year in the league is perfectly fine and should be perfectly fine for anyone. I think if you miss out on European football next year, there is that conversation in that summer or next summer, sorry. But I think ultimately he has one more season to really put a stamp on it and then probably move to the next level.
Because Pep leaves in summer 2025.
Yeah, it's hard pressed to find a better alternative, really. So, yeah.
I mean, like, it depends if Pep's having any say in his successor. You imagine he probably would do. Then De Zerbi's going to be up there, isn't he?
Well for Ferguson and Moyes, so why not? All right, last thing. We've got 5 games in 19 days now on the run up to Christmas. Then we get a nice actual week-long break between Palace and Spurs, which has been a bit of a benefit, really, because they've pushed us back for the Spurs game and they brought us forward for the other one. So we've actually been gifted a bit of a legitimate week off, which is rare in and of itself, especially around the Christmas period. But just from you guys, we've got Brentford at home, Burnley at home, Arsenal away, and Palace away. So 12 points. 12 points up for grabs. How many do you think we get? Not how many do you want us to get? How many do you think we get from those 4 games?
5.
I'm going to go 6, I think.
Oh, and I'm going 7. So we were all very optimistic, which is nice.
I'm going a win. I'm going a win over either Brentford or Burnley. Can't decide which. And a draw in the other one.
Same.
And then a point at Palace.
I think we beat them.
I'm dead set on 2 wins and 2 losses somewhere. I think that was my thinking. So,
you know what's going to happen is we're going to win at Arsenal and lose the other 3.
Yeah. And
probably,
in true Brighton fashion, that's exactly what's going to happen. Yeah.
And final one, Marseille at home for the big boy qualification. Do we do it?
Yeah.
Yeah, you've got to go for it.
Yeah.
And I think you probably forego that Arsenal result, don't you? You go all in on the Thursday, and
you've got to.
Yeah.
Similar to this week, really.
Yeah.
You've got to go.
You do.
Yeah.
And
if it's the difference basically between having another 2 weeks off. Well, it's 2 weeks in February that we wouldn't have a midweek game.
Yeah. So you get that
it's worth the gamble.
Yeah.
Vitally important at this point.
Really is.
Great point.
All right, perfect. So Wednesday we've got Brentford. Next Saturday, a lovely 3:00 kickoff against Burnley. Love that. I'm not sure if we'll be back in midweek. Probably not. Don't know. We'll see. But we'll be here for both to recover them both. I'll be at the Burnley game, not the Brentford midweek game. Traveling down there, it's not happening, especially with the train strikes going on. So that would be a disaster. Robin, are you making any before Christmas?
Hoping to. TBC, but hoping to.
All right, cool. Well, we will be back next weekend at the latest, possibly midweek, if it's enough of a mess and crazy enough to warrant it. If it's like a 0-0, you definitely won't be hearing from us. But have a good week, everybody. First week of December, wildly enough, which is just unbelievable
Wild.
to think about.
Yeah.
But be safe out there. It's getting cold. And just, have a good week.
Cheers all.